Thank you, Caroline. There's been a lot of discussion about the Epstein files and the president's comments yesterday calling it a hoax. Can you clarify which part of the Epstein hoax is the hoax part?
The president is referring to the fact that Democrats have now seized on this as if they ever wanted transparency when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, which is an asinine suggestion for any Democrat to make. The Democrats had control of this building, the White House, for 4 years, and they didn't do a dang thing when it came to transparency in regards to Jeffrey Epstein and his heinous crimes. It was this president who directed the Department of Justice and the Attorney General to do an exhaustive review of all files related to Jeffrey Epstein, which they did.
So that was White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt hosting what I am pretty sure is her first White House press briefing since the Epstein debacle erupted in the way that it has. She has been hiding from the press, hoping to avoid answering questions about this entire screw-up by Donald Trump. And you can see she was visibly triggered there when confronted by a Fox News reporter of all people who continues to press her in subsequent clips that we'll play. But this was a predictably disastrous White House press briefing as Karoline Leavitt hoped to cover for Donald Trump's mishandling of the Epstein debacle. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, again, Karoline Leavitt is, well, she's put on the ropes here. She really is. I mean, Donald Trump has handled this so spectacularly stupidly that no matter how good of a spin doctor you are, and I think Leavitt is by far the most competent and capable of Donald Trump's press secretary. She's the culmination of the ultimate MAGA press secretary. But, you know, that's almost like being the world's smartest flat earther, right? I mean, when the facts are so squarely against you, you're kind of screwed, as she so often is. And she continues to get pressed by the media and, again, specifically a Fox News reporter.
So the president has been transparent. He has followed through on his promises to the American people, but he doesn't like to see Democrats and the mainstream media covering this like it's the biggest story that the American people care about. The president has been working so hard this week. On Tuesday, he went to Pennsylvania, where he secured $90 billion in investments for the Commonwealth, for the people of that state. After that, he came back to the Oval Office at 8 p.m. He went in there to whip votes to get the Genius Act signed into law. And because of his efforts, that bill is now going to be signed and passed. The president has been...
So again, this is Leavitt here. She's visibly agitated. She's desperate to spin here. She's like, I just don't want you guys talking about this because, like, we do like a bunch of other things. They are used to setting the narrative. The right is really good at this. They suck at governing, but they are really good at taking power, and they're really good at setting the narrative. This is the first time that I can think of really where we have had a sustained media period where the Trump administration and the MAGA movement have been unable to reshift the narrative. They're throwing, what about Biden's auto pen? What about this? What about that? The other. They're just totally powerless at the moment, and they're terrified. And I think it's hilarious. And that's why her umbrage and her outrage is just so pathetic. It's like, yeah, you did this to yourselves. You all campaigned on the Epstein issue. You made commitments to your base. You gassed and you hyped them up. And now you've let them down. That's on you. That's Trump's stupidity. And that's your stupidity as a consequence for trying to defend it. As Justin Law points out, the White House's explanation of the Epstein files makes no sense. Democrats didn't do a dang thing with the Epstein files, Leavitt says, but Dems are now somehow behind the files. Those same files that allowed Bondi to determine there should be no further charges, but are the same files that can't be released because there are hopes from Democrats? How? Exactly. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's totally internally inconsistent. They are throwing shit at the wall and hoping that through sheer filibuster of words, they can bamboozle you into either exhaustion or compliance. And so far, it has not worked. Here's another clip.
Move on from this story, but you do have some prominent figures, including the Senate Majority Leader, the House Speaker, voicing support for the files to come out. Representative Massey collecting signatures that would force a discharge petition for a vote on the floor for this. It doesn't seem to be going away. What is stopping the administration from just redacting any sensitive information, grand jury information, and putting out what is appropriate so that the American people can decide and then let this story die?
Well, in terms of redactions or grand jury seals, those are questions for the Department of Justice. Those are also questions for the judges who have that information under a seal, and that would have to be requested, and a judge would have to approve it. That's out of the president's control. He has said, in agreement with some of the leaders on Capitol Hill, that if the Attorney General and the Department of Justice come across any other credible evidence, they should provide that to the American people. The president has said that, and he agrees with them on
Why
that.
did he fire Maureen Comey?
The Department of Justice did, and I would defer you to them. Dash.
So that there at the end, they're talking about the firing of Maureen Comey, who was the prosecutor who prosecuted Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Awfully convenient time to fire her, isn't it? And again, you can just see Leavitt's pissed, and the Fox reporter Jackie Heinrich is like, listen, we'll get off this topic, but this isn't going away. You guys are screwing up on this. Just give the transparency you promised. Well, we can't because we need judges' permissions. Wait a minute. I thought you guys were complaining nonstop about judges. Judges shouldn't be overreaching. Judges shouldn't be stopping the administration. Now you want to defer to judges? That's awfully convenient, right? Sure seems like you have no real interest in releasing the Epstein files. Maybe you should say, hey, listen, Donald Trump is so interested in transparency. He feels his hands are tied, but you know what? He is publicly and privately encouraging Republican lawmakers to sign Congressman Massey's discharge petition, which would create, by an act of Congress, it would compel the executive branch to release the Epstein files, and maybe a judge would take that more seriously. He could do that, but suspiciously he's not, and he's contradicting himself left, right, and center. It's almost like you guys don't really care about releasing the Epstein files. Here's another clip.
Has the White House been directly in touch with some of the MAGA influencers that are still not satisfied with the administration's handling? And has the message to them been similar to what the president has said, which is sort of either let this go or we don't need your support?
Well, look, the president and this team are always in contact with the president's supporters, with voices of many kinds on both sides of the aisle. I think that's part of the reason this president is a great president, because he's willing to listen and hear other people's perspectives. But ultimately, he has led this country not just over the past 6 months to historic success, but also through his first 4 years as president. And as the leader and the creator of the MAGA movement, he has led through these perilous times for our country based on instinct and in the best interest of the country. And as I always say, the American people should trust in President Trump.
So cultish, so gross, so gross. All this evidence in the contrary. Don't believe your lying eyes. You just trust the dear leader. So fucking gross. If a Democrat said something like that under Biden or Obama or anybody else, hey, despite all this evidence to the contrary, and we can't offer you anything more than that, we can't refute the evidence against us, we're just telling you trust in us. That would be impossibly disgusting. And yet it's coming from the Republican Party and Donald Trump. Here's another clip.
Last month, the Canadian Prime Minister said the president had agreed to a July 21st deadline to sort of work towards a trade agreement. That's 4 days from now. Could there be a trade agreement with Canada in 4 days?
Well, look, we'll see. The trade team continues to be very active in our conversations and discussions with Canada. The president himself has said, unfortunately, our neighbors to the north have been pretty difficult to deal with when it comes to matters on trade. But in trade, generally speaking, as you know, 25 countries have received letters thus far from the president directly with his big, beautiful signature on them, from Japan to Korea, South Africa, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, just a few countries, and Canada also received a letter for 35%. With that said, if countries want to have legitimate further discussions, the Trump administration and the president's trade team are willing to have further talks. But these letters these countries have been receiving are the deals. And
so again, desperate to change the topic, number one, from Epstein, and number two, desperate to move the goalposts. Hey, these unilateral tariff letters are basically the same thing as bilateral trade agreements. That's kind of what we always meant. Bullshit. They promised 90 bilateral trade deals in 90 days. They failed to deliver by a factor of like 89, if I'm being charitable, maybe 90, but 89, I'll grant. And so now they're trying to move the goalpost because they failed to deliver. And again, I don't think it's going to work. You should not grade them on a curve. You should not let them move the goalpost. Here's another clip.
Thank you, Karoline.
No, I called on Charlie, but Deanna, you can go ahead too. Go ahead.
The president said that he floated the idea of a special prosecutor in the Epstein case. Can you confirm that? And has he asked the Attorney General to do this, to appoint a special prosecutor to look it over?
Well, the idea was floated from someone in the media to the president. The president would not recommend a special prosecutor in the Epstein case. That's how he feels. And as for his discussions with the Attorney General, I'm not sure.
So there you go. Some people were like, hey, listen, you know what he's going to do what Steve Bannon wants, and he's going to appoint a special prosecutor to placate MAGA. Nope, MAGA got the finger again from Donald Trump. There will be no Epstein report release and no special counsel. Here's another clip.
Thank you, Caroline. Two questions. So the first is that President Trump said that the Attorney General only gave him a brief overview of what was in these Epstein files. Does he have knowledge or an understanding of what is in the files related to Epstein that have not been released?
Not to my knowledge, and that's a question for the Attorney General, as I said, and the President has told the Attorney General if they have any more credible evidence, they should release it.
Is that evidence, would she have to run that by the President before she released it?
I don't think so. He said if she has any more credible evidence, she should release it.
Again, and it doesn't seem like the further release is forthcoming at all. Now, this one's pretty interesting because one of the things that was reported is that Trump had considered pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell, who was, Jeffrey Epstein's ex-partner, ex-girlfriend, and effectively the madame in the Epstein trafficking situation, somebody highly implicated.
And then
Elizabeth.
Caroline, one more.
Elizabeth,
will the
go
president consider pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell if the Epstein case is a hoax?
Okay,
She's pissed. She doesn't want to answer any Epstein-related questions. Further still. Listen, there are other things that I want to talk about. The other clips there, like one about Trump's just his cognitive decline, which we just recorded a video about that. I'll probably do a video about her response separately. But I guess we'll keep it on the topic of, again, Epstein. And in this case, again, they bring up the firing of the prosecutor who prosecuted Epstein in the first place, Maureen Comey.
More Democrats would join us in that.
I wanted to follow up on the Maureen Comey question just to clarify. Did the White House have any knowledge or did the president sign off on her firing?
This was a decision that was made by the Department of Justice.
So, again, not a real answer. Okay, maybe as a factual matter, they were the ones who made the decision or at least finalized the decision. But did Trump have any foreknowledge of it? Did he weigh in? Did he have any influence over it? She could have said, no, Donald Trump was totally divorced from the situation from start to finish. This was only in the purview and the decision was only made by the DOJ. And instead, she's like, no, this was a decision made by the DOJ, which actually elides the question in question. Here's one last clip.
Does the president believe that justice has been served in the Epstein case?
Look, the president believes that he directed the Department of Justice to do an exhaustive and thorough review, and they did that. And they all agreed, the FBI director, the deputy FBI director, the attorney general, on the memo that they drafted and they released.
So again, you see it, she's pissed. She's just visibly pissed throughout this entire press briefing, but she's also keeping it together in ways that she probably doesn't want to because, again, this is the first White House press briefing that I can think of since the Epstein debacle erupted in the way that it has. They have been trying to hide from the media, hoping this would blow over and they would come back to a more favorable media ecosystem. That hasn't happened, so they rolled the dice on this. But this was a total disaster. I don't think that this has answered any questions. I don't think this has satisfied anybody, and I think it's only going to further inflame tensions. And quite frankly, I think that's good because a weakened MAGA Republican base and a weakened Trump administration, I would argue, is better for the country. There you have it. Karoline Leavitt's latest disastrous White House press briefing, all about Epstein. Very unhappy, and particularly unhappy that she was pressed repeatedly by Fox News, of all places. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.